Hey guys, tonight we're headed somewhere high silent and absolutely forbidden. You crouch beneath silver clouds that drift lazily over Mount Olympus, the moonlight painting god palaces in bone-white glow. Your breath barely stirs the air. You're not supposed to be here. Not among the halls of thunderbolts and eternal nectar. Not sneaking behind marble columns that hum with divinity. And definitely not shadowing a titan who's about to make one of the worst and most heroic decisions in mythological history. Because Prometheus tall and quiet is up to something. His eyes flick left and right, then settle on a flickering orange glow locked inside a divine brazier. This isn't ordinary fire. This is the fire. The essence of knowledge, warmth, progressed technology, late-night marshmallow roasts, and indoor plumbing if you stretch far enough. The gods hoard it here, smugly sipping ambrosia while humans below shiver and scrape rocks together hoping for sparks and luck. Prometheus, he's done watching them suffer. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your city and local time in the comments so we can see just how far this little fire spreads. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You inch closer, nerves tingling as Prometheus reaches into the divine flame. But he doesn't burn. That's the first clue this story isn't about physics, it's about defiance. Instead of a torch, he cups the flame in a hollowed-out fennel stalk, like a fiery scroll. Ancient myth, love symbolism, and fennel, known as narthex in Greek, was thought to contain life's secrets. And what's more secretive than fire? You follow his quiet descent down from the cloud-wrapped heights of Olympus to the dusky mortal world. Below, humans blink in confusion as the sky opens not in wrath but in warmth. You watch one of them cup trembling hands around the flame like a newborn chick. Another quickly figures out how to roast a rabbit. One begins drawing strange shapes on a cave wall, maybe the first meme or just a goat, but it spreads. The flame, the ideas, the hunger for more. Prometheus doesn't give a dramatic speech. He just watches silently as something fundamental changes in the world. You feel it too. The crackle of energy, the dawn of invention. Historians still argue whether Prometheus is truly the first rebel in literature, or simply a divine middle manager doing community service. But in this moment, you see him clearly part genius, part anarchist, all nerve. And here's a quirky detail you won't find on most tourist plaques. The myth says Prometheus didn't just give humans fire, he also taught them how to use it. How to cook forged metal survive. Winter, make weapons, and probably overcook fish. Basically, he installed the first upgrade patch for humanity. Up above, Olympus doesn't notice right away, which gives you time to admire the transformation happening down here. The night grows less dangerous. Shadows shrink. Hunters become blacksmiths. Suddenly, people can see each other's faces at night, and the results are mixed. There's joy, fear, confusion, and at least one accidental haircut. Prometheus, meanwhile, lingers on the edge of things. He doesn't want credit, he just wants balance. He's always been like this team human, even though he's technically a titan from the older generation of gods who were overthrown by Zeus and the Olympians. And yes, that gets messy. You're standing in the middle of a very dysfunctional divine family reunion. Prometheus chose to help Zeus during the big war between Titans and Olympians, which makes his later betrayal all the more deliciously ironic. Picture helping your boss win the company takeover and then stealing office supplies on day one. There's this eerie calm before everything snaps. You know how when someone breaks a rule so massively, the universe seems to hold its breath? That's the vibe. The stars freeze, the wind goes silent. Even the fire flickers a little nervously in the fennel stalks scattered across Earth. And then somewhere far above, a thundercloud growls. You barely hear it, but Prometheus, he flinches. Because now the gods know. Zeus, king of all sky things, wearer of absurdly powerful abs and eternal thunderbolt hoarder, has just received a status update. And let's just say he is not giving Prometheus a 5-star review. In fact, the ancient poet Hesiod describes Zeus as furious, but not just because of the fire. It's because Prometheus keeps interfering. First, he tricked Zeus during a feast, disguising bones with fat to make a gross offering look tasty. Then he handed out divine secrets like party favors. This fire theft is strike 3. And trust me, Zeus does believe in third strike punishments. Up on Olympus, lightning is starting to gather like gossip. Gods are whispering. Hephaestus, the forge god, mutters something about what a waste of perfectly good liver. Hera raises an eyebrow. Hermes is already packing a satchel. He always gets messenger duty when someone's about to be chained to a rock. But you don't see that yet. You're still with Prometheus still crouching at the edge of humanity's bonfire party. Someone's figured out how to boil water. Someone else just lit their eyebrows on fire. The future is coming fast, messy, and full of learning curves. And for a few precious moments, Prometheus looks content. He doesn't smile, but the corners of his mouth don't droop either. This was worth it. This spark, this heat, this beginning. Too bad he won't get to enjoy what comes next. Because even as the fires spread as wheels are imagined, and words are born somewhere high above Olympus, Zeus is preparing something. Something so bizarre, so extra, so wildly over the top, that it will echo through myth for thousands of years. And you, dear listener, are going to witness every gut-clenching moment of it. You stay low crouched among the rocks, the firelight of early humans flickering on your face. The warmth is real. You feel it on your skin and your bones, but the warmth is only half the story. Because with fire, glorious, golden, crackling fire comes everything else. You trail behind a group of humans as they gather around the flame Prometheus gave them. And it's not just about cooking meat now. It's protection from wild animals. It's light in the darkness. It's the symbol that says, we are not like the others. Fire becomes the first real tool of civilization, and with tools comes trouble. You watch a child poke a stick into the fire and wave it around like a magic wand. It catches the attention of an elder who squints thoughtfully. Before long, the tribe is experimenting, burning different woods, heating rocks, accidentally inventing ouch. Historians still argue whether early humans truly needed divine intervention to figure out fire or if they stumbled upon it by watching lightning strikes and forest fires. But from your cozy position just beyond the myth, it's clear the Greeks weren't really writing about science. They were writing about power, about who gets to control it, and what happens when that control slips. As you follow Prometheus's gift across time, the sparks begin to multiply. Someone figures out that clay hardens in fire. Someone else notices that certain rocks, when melted, turn into metal. Copper, bronze, iron. Suddenly, we're not just warming ourselves, we're forging weapons. Creating locks, casting bells, fashioning mirrors so people can stare at themselves with full Bronze Age confidence. It gets weird fast. Here's a fun, lesser-known detail. Ancient fire rituals weren't just about survival. In some early cultures, fire became a sacred being. In Zoroastrianism, for instance, fire is literally a divine presence, a symbol of truth and purity. Sacred fire temples still burn today, thousands of years later. And over in India, the god Agni is not just a fire deity, he's also a mailman between humans and the gods. Light a flame, make an offering, and boom, your message gets delivered express. But let's bring it back to the Greeks. You wander through a smoky village in what would one day be Thessaly. The people here are now cooking bread, boiling herbs, and trying to keep that one guy from setting his goat on fire. Progress is messy, and yet for all the transformation fire brings, you notice something else fear. The fire is worshipped, yes, but also guarded, hidden, protected. Already humans seem to know this thing is dangerous, and not just because of burns. Because fire brings choices, and choices bring conflict. Take this little domestic scene, two brothers arguing over how much wood to add. One says more, one says less. Suddenly you're witnessing the first energy crisis, and possibly the first family feud that ends with someone sleeping in a pile of furs outside. You drift through centuries, sparks leap from hearths to temples, cities rise around flame-lit forums. The Olympic torch, a nod to Prometheus's original crime, becomes a tradition in his honor, though probably without the liver-eating part. We light candles and memory lanterns in celebration, and bonfires in protest. The flame isn't just warmth, it's meaning, and the Greeks knew it. But Prometheus, he's nowhere to be found now. You look for him on mountaintops and cave shadows under the weight of starless skies, but he's vanished. Already the gods are in motion. Already the price is coming due. And yet here on the ground, no one seems to notice. The people gather wood. They build hearths. They tell stories by firelight. A grandmother waves her arms and acts out a tale how a god once tricked the king of the sky and gave humanity a piece of heaven. The children lean forward, eyes wide. One of them whispers, "Was the god punished?" The grandmother just smiles, always. Because even now, even in this safe ring of warmth, they know the truth. Every gift has a cost. You drift beside one young woman crouching near the fire, blowing gently to coax the embers back to life. Her hands are steady. Her face is serious. And you realize this is it. This is the beginning of human mastery. Not because they're building monuments, but because they're learning to control something untouchable. Fire is now a tool, but it's also a test. And Prometheus, well, he set that test in motion. He wasn't just handing over warmth, he was handing over the future. The weird thing is, the myth skips a lot of this. The ancient texts don't bother detailing what humans did with fire once they had it. Maybe because the Greeks knew that part didn't need explaining. Everyone had their own version, their own memories of what fire meant. But fringe scholars have speculated that early versions of the myth were darker, more ambiguous. In some obscure fragments, Prometheus's fire doesn't just bring civilization. It brings greed, war, deforestation. Someone once called him the first arsonist. Kind of takes the glow off the whole benevolent titan vibe, doesn't it? But that's what makes the story so sticky. So human. Because even as you walk among the first firekeepers, you see the paradox fire brings hope, and destruction. It gives light and casts shadows. And the gods. They weren't just upset about a stolen flame. They were terrified of what it would become. You step back from the fire now, watching as its crackling warmth spreads further than Prometheus probably ever imagined. Cities, ships, empires, steam engines and satellites and spicy ramen, microwaved at 3 a.m. in some dorm room far in the future. All of it begins here, with a stolen spark, with a gift that couldn't be returned. And far above it all, Olympus has gone silent, which is a terrible sign. Because you're about to see what divine vengeance looks like when the gods stop sulking and start scheming. And trust me, it's not just punishment, it's theater. Zeus never does anything halfway. The quiet on Olympus doesn't last. You can feel it building this impossible electric stillness, like the moment right before thunder. Zeus doesn't yell. Not at first. No bellowing from the clouds, no lightning bolts hurled in blind rage. Instead, he sits on his golden throne, hands steepled, brows low. He is thinking, and that's worse. Because a furious Zeus is dangerous, sure. But a plotting Zeus. That's legendary level terrifying. You stand at the edge of his court watching the gods gather in uneasy silence. Hermes fidgets. Athena looks suspiciously smug, as if she saw this coming. Hera, always elegantly aloof, raises one eyebrow at her husband's expression and says nothing. She knows better than to interrupt when his temper starts to boil. This isn't just about fire anymore. This is about betrayal. Olympus has its rules unspoken and ironclad. Mortals beg. Gods grant maybe. Titans, they don't meddle. And Prometheus. He crossed all the lines. Gave mortals not just fire, but independence. And that's the real crime. You feel the tension in the air, that charged shimmer that says the clouds are getting itchy. Somewhere, a bird explodes into ash. Zeus finally speaks. Bring me chains. Now we should pause here. Because this is where Zeus gets creative. He doesn't just want revenge, he wants an example. Something eternal, something operatic. Historians still argue whether this moment was shaped by earlier, older myths, Near Eastern legends of trickster gods who defied higher powers and paid dearly for it. Some whisper Prometheus is just the Greek remix of older firebringers like Enki or Loki, each punished in eerily similar ways. But whatever the source, Zeus is ready to deliver a punishment so over the top, it practically requires a fog machine. You follow him as he calls Hephaestus, god of blacksmiths, for a private chat. Hephaestus is the only one who can forge what Zeus demands: unbreakable chains. etched with divine curse words in letters too ancient to read. He doesn't look thrilled. In fact, Hephaestus has always had a weird relationship with Prometheus' professional respect. Maybe even sympathy. After all, both were craftsmen. But gods follow orders, especially when thunderbolts are on the table. So the forge roars to life. You can almost smell the molten metal, hear the hiss of steam and groan of anvils. Sparks fly like stardust as Hephaestus forges shackles so strong they can bind a titan. Not just physically, but magically. A kind of divine encryption locking Prometheus into a fate no password reset will ever fix. And then comes the location. Now Zeus could have locked him in Tartarus. That's the ancient Greek underworld, basically, where bad immortals go to time out forever. But no, that's too quiet. Too private. Instead, he chooses spectacle. The Caucasus Mountains. A jagged, storm-wrapped spine of stone rising above the known world. Wild, brutal, nearly unreachable. A place humans can't climb, but can see. That's the point. Prometheus won't just suffer. He'll be a monument, a billboard, a cautionary tale carved into the sky. You're swept up as the gods move like storm fronts. Hermes is dispatched to drag Prometheus in. He finds him, of course, he always does. And Prometheus, he doesn't run. He just looks up tired knowing, maybe even a little smug. Because in a way, he's already won. Still the chains come. You watch as he's hauled across the heavens' limbs, heavy with divine metal expression, locked in stony silence. There's no trial, no speech. Just a thud as Hephaestus bolts him into the mountain face. His arms are stretched wide, wrists bleeding, golden ichor head slumped forward. And it gets worse, because the chains are just the beginning. Zeus wants a punishment that renews, that repeats, that echoes into eternity. So he sends her the eagle, not a regular eagle, a god-made nightmare bird, big enough to shadow a village with talons like obsidian, and a beak that glows faintly with celestial fire. And its job simple. Every day it flies to Prometheus's exposed form. Every day it lands, and every day it eats his liver. That's not an exaggeration. That's the actual punishment, an endlessly regenerating liver consumed daily by a divine sky vulture. Over and over, no end, no rest, just pain. Digestion, regrowth, repeat. Ancient scholars believe the liver was the seat of emotion and vitality. So this wasn't just physical torture, it was spiritual. Zeus wasn't just ripping flesh, he was gutting identity. And here's your quirky fact of the day: the ancient Greeks had no idea how biology actually worked. But they were weirdly obsessed with the liver. It appears in dreams and divinations and medical scrolls. So for them, this punishment wasn't random, it was precise. It was personal. You float near Prometheus as the eagle approaches for the first time. Its wings beat like drums. Prometheus looks up, jaw clenched. He doesn't scream, not yet. But when the beak plunges and sharp and slow, you hear something break. Not just flesh, but resolve. Still, he doesn't beg, because Prometheus knew this was coming. He knew that giving fire would burn him too, and maybe he thinks it was worth it. Below, the humans go on building, lighting, living, oblivious. And up here, strapped to the bones of the world, Prometheus begins the long, slow sentence of immortality. And guess what? Zeus still isn't done, because you haven't even seen Pandora yet. You drift downward away from the wind-scoured peak, where Prometheus hangs in silence chained, and bleeding golden ichor. The eagle circles lazily overhead, now feathers slick with divine punishment, already bored with its grisly routine. But Zeus. Oh, he's just getting warmed up. Because to Zeus, Prometheus wasn't the only one who needed a lesson. You, dear listener, are about to witness the creation of one of the most famous cautionary gifts in mythology. A divine setup disguised as a dream. It starts as most bad ideas do, with a committee. You hover near Zeus's throne as he gathers the Olympian elite Hephaestus, the Forge Master Athena, the sharp-minded Aphrodite, the dangerously charming, and Hermes, the master of mischief. He gives them one collective order: build a perfect human woman. Not a regular woman. Not a mortal with free will kind of woman. No, this one would be designed by the gods like a cosmic trap. A honeypot of doom wrapped in beauty and grace. Her name, Pandora, which by the way means all gifted. Cute, right? A little misleading. Extremely. You watch as Hephaestus sculpts her from clay, each curve and joint, smooth like marble in moonlight. Athena breathes life into her, giving her poised talent, and just a flicker of cunning intelligence. Aphrodite adds, beauty, of course, radiant enough to drop jaws across 10 city-states. And Hermes, he gives her curiosity, which is basically the divine version of installing a malware program that says, please click me. As Pandora awakens blinking in her new skin, you sense no malice in her. That's the tragic part. She doesn't know she's a weapon. She is the trap, and she has no clue. Historians still argue whether Pandora was truly guilty of anything, or if she was just collateral damage in the gods' long, messy vendettas. And here's the fringe tidbit you probably haven't heard in earlier Greek stories. Pandora wasn't even the first woman. In some versions, there were generations before her, but she's the one the gods put on center stage, the face of consequence. A single figure crafted not just to exist, but to undo. And her delivery. Oh, it's just as theatrical as you'd expect. Zeus sends her down to earth not on a flaming chariot or thundercloud, but as a graceful visitor, a gift wrapped in silks and secrets. Her arrival is less ominous omen, and more meet-cute gone horribly wrong, because she's destined for Epimetheus, Prometheus's brother. And remember, Epimetheus. His name literally means afterthought. So naturally, when Prometheus warned him not to accept gifts from Zeus, especially suspiciously perfect ones, Epimetheus immediately forgot. You float beside him as he sees Pandora for the first time. His jaw hits the floor. His brain checked out completely. He marries her almost instantly. No questions asked, no prenup, no divine background check. And on their wedding day, Zeus sends one last parting gift, a beautifully decorated jar. Yes, a jar seized, not a box. The whole Pandora's box thing is a mistranslation from the 1500s. We're talking terracotta Tupperware here. The jar comes with a strict instruction. Do not open as it. So naturally you know exactly what happens next. Now this part's important. Because Pandora doesn't act out of spite. She isn't cackling or rubbing her hands together. You watch her stare at that sealed jar for days, maybe weeks. She paces. She hums. She does anything to distract herself. But that curiosity, that God-given Hermes-infused ache to know it grows. Eventually, one quiet morning, she lifts the lid, and the world changes. You feel it first as a rush of wind, then a sharp hiss, like 1,000 unseen insects boiling into the sky. Out pour the caca, the evils. Sickness, pain, greed, jealousy, deceit, despair. They're not demons, not monsters. They're concepts, alive and wriggling like smoke, impossible to recapture. You back away fast watching people nearby double over in sudden illness. Crops wither. Arguments erupt. A baby cries without stopping. Pandora stumbles back. Terrified slams the lid shut, but it's too late. All the suffering has already slipped through her fingers. Except for one thing. In the bottom of the jar, clinging like dew, lies hope. That's right. Elpis in Greek, gentle, stubborn, and strangely patient. Pandora sees it glowing faintly, and this time chooses not to release it. Some scholars argue she left hope inside intentionally as a kind of buffer, a secret reserve of strength. Others think she just panicked. But you see her decision for what it is, the first true act of human complexity. Regret, restraint, consequence. And now humanity has more than fire. It has pain. You drift back to the village where fires still burn, but the mood has changed. People fight over food. They clutch at aching limbs. They look over their shoulders at shadows. You can see it in their eyes, confusion. Why does life hurt now? Because the gods didn't just punish Prometheus. They punished everyone. Zeus wasn't just making a point. He was rewriting the rules. No more paradise, no more favor. From here on out, humanity would live in a world where beauty came with cost, curiosity came with consequence, and every gift came with a price tag no one could return. And up on that mountain, Prometheus still hangs. Still bleeding, still silent. He doesn't know about Pandora. Not yet. But something tells you when he finds out he'll understand exactly what Zeus did. Because this wasn't just revenge. It was a symphony of suffering. A slow-motion disaster with perfect pacing. Fire gave humanity power. Pandora gave it perspective. And that in a way is even more dangerous. You hover in the quiet just after the jar's lid slams shut. The air is different now. Thicker, like the world itself is trying to breathe through smoke. You watch Pandora tremble beside the still glowing vessel. She won't touch it again. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Around her, the village is groaning under the weight of all that has spilled loose heartbreak, envy, sleeplessness, stomach flu, awkward family dinners, pick your poison. It's all here now. And it doesn't go away. You wander through the aftermath. A farmer curses the soil for drying overnight. A couple argues bitterly, neither sure why. Children wake up afraid of the dark, though they have never been told to be. Even the fires Prometheus gave them don't feel so warm anymore. The glow flickers with uncertainty. So here we are. The punishment isn't just nailed to a mountainside, it's woven into every human life. And back in Olympus, Zeus watches with the smuggest expression known to any god. His plan worked. Oh, Prometheus is still bound and bleeding, sure, but... This part Pandora's release of pain. That was the long game. The kind of chess move you brag about in poems for 2,000 years. You rise up past the clouds again, where the gods sip nectar and swap gossip about mortals now crying over stubbed toes and rejection letters. But Zeus isn't laughing, not really, he's watching, because he's waiting for something. You turn your gaze to the east toward the ragged cliffs of the Caucasus Mountains. There, Prometheus still suffers silent beneath gray skies. His liver has already been regrown. The eagle is circling back for seconds. This loop will repeat until the stars forget how to shine. But something has shifted. Prometheus doesn't just hang, now he listens. And you begin to wonder, is that all Zeus wanted? Just pain? Or is there more to this theater? See, here's the thing. Prometheus isn't like the other Titans. Most of them are locked away in Tartarus, groaning in the dark. But Prometheus is different. He sided with Zeus in the Great Titanomachy, the war between old gods and new. He's a traitor to his own kind, and now a rebel against the Olympians too. A man caught between generations. So why didn't Zeus just erase him? Why not finish the job? Historians still argue whether Zeus needed Prometheus alive. Maybe the old Titan knew too much. Some whisper that Prometheus held a secret one so powerful it could undo Olympus itself. A prophecy. A name. Something Zeus didn't know. Which to a god obsessed with control is worse than open rebellion. And that's why Zeus didn't kill him. That's why the eagle pecks but never finishes. This isn't just about punishment. It's about pressure. Prometheus in his silence holds something Zeus wants. But you'll have to wait a little longer to find out what. For now, you stay with the humans. And things are complicated. The world is no longer simple. Fire was supposed to elevate them. And it did. But now they've got sleepless nights, fevers, bad poetry, and worst of all, choices. Do I forgive my brother? Do I share my fire? Do I open the jar just one more time? Because here's the real twist. Pandora's jar didn't just release evil. It made people aware of evil. Before the jar, there were no words for suffering. No definitions for regret. Now there are entire songs written about it. Whole mythologies, therapy appointments, stand-up comedy sets. And as you move through this mess of beautiful broken humanity, you realize they're adjusting. Slowly, yes, clumsily, but adapting all the same. Someone starts making salves for wounds. Another builds a shelter that keeps the wind out better. A mother tells her crying child a story about how pain is part of the world now, but it doesn't mean the fire's gone out. You smile, that's how it begins, again. And up on his mountain perch, Prometheus feels it too. You drift beside him during a rare moment when the eagle hasn't arrived yet. His eyes are open, watching the distant horizon. He doesn't look angry. or regretful, or broken. He looks curious. Because for all his pain, Prometheus has one thing even Zeus doesn't. Patience. The humans still burn their fingers, yes. They still fall into greed and envy. But they also build, heal, dream. The flame still burns, and even under layers of suffering, hope lingers. Remember that bit of hope left in the jar? It didn't die. It just waited. And humans found ways to summon it again. In lullabies, in prayers, in stubborn little smiles during hard times. They're fire carriers now, yes, but also bearers of grief and still standing. You trail through a field where people are learning to farm with fire-hardened tools. You see someone helping another walk after an injury. A child lights a torch and walks bravely into a cave to explore, not to escape, but to understand. This, you realize, is the strange alchemy of the myth. Prometheus gave them fire. Pandora gave them the reason to use it wisely. And somewhere deep in Olympus, Zeus hears the echo of laughter by firelight and scowls. Maybe he underestimated them. Maybe the punishment backfired in the long run. But he's not ready to admit it. Not yet. So for now, the eagle returns. Prometheus endures. The humans carry on. And the gods, they keep watching. But the story, it's just getting started. The wind howls through the Caucasus peaks like a living thing. It rakes through the crevices, howling past stone and snow, and there on a sheer cliff face hangs Prometheus. You drift closer again, feeling the cold bite against your skinless presence, and watch as the sky pales to a colorless dawn. He's awake. Not that he sleeps. That luxury died long ago, but he blinks slowly, deliberately, as if to say, still here. The chains hold. Always. They loop around his wrists and ankles and dig into his ribs forged from divine bronze and spells, spoken in languages older than time. They don't rust. They don't give. They don't loosen, not even a little. And then you hear it. The beating of massive wings. You don't have to look up. You already know what it is. The eagle arrives right on schedule like some deranged celestial clockwork. Its wings slice through the air with a sound that makes your teeth ache. The wind from its descent nearly knocks you backward. It lands, and Prometheus lifts his chin just a little. The eagle doesn't hesitate. It doesn't gloat. It just gets to work. Its beak plunges into his side, tearing through flesh like warm butter. You flinch instinctively, but Prometheus, he barely reacts. His jaw clenches, his fists tighten, but no screams. Not anymore. Screaming is for the early centuries. Now he grits through it. Because the worst part isn't the pain, it's the repetition. And you know what's even more infuriating? His liver grows back, every single night. Ancient people didn't know exactly what a liver did, but they sensed it was important. Maybe it was the way it bled or the way it nestled deep in the body like a secret. In Babylonian times, priests read the livers of sheep to divine the future. To the Greeks, the liver symbolized life itself. So imagine having yours torn out. Daily, forever. You hover beside Prometheus and wonder, how does he stay sane? And maybe he doesn't. Maybe he talks to the wind. Maybe he counts the stars. Maybe he imagines telling Epimetheus, I told you not to accept any gifts from Zeus, but no. But there's a flicker in his eyes you can't ignore. Not despair, not rage. Resolve. He's waiting. Waiting for something, or someone. You glance around, there's nothing but mountains and sky. No hidden keys, no rescue parties, just vultures, wind, stone, and pain. Lots of pain. Still even chained, even disemboweled Prometheus won't apologize. He won't take it back. Because the fire still burns down below. The people, his people, are using it. Building with it. Getting burned, sure, but also surviving. That's what makes this punishment so strange. So layered. Zeus could have wiped him out with a blink. But instead he curated this torment. Custom designed it for maximum insult and minimal closure. Historians still debate whether Zeus feared Prometheus or needed him. Because Prometheus wasn't just a thief. He was a thinker. A trickster. The kind of immortal who asks inconvenient questions. You know, the worst kind. And Zeus, he doesn't like being questioned. So he turned the questioner into a permanent example. But there's another possibility one the more fringe thinkers whisper about. What if Zeus wanted Prometheus to survive? What if the real punishment wasn't physical pain but isolation? The unrelenting awareness of time passing, people evolving, and yet him stuck. Imagine watching your gift being used by generations who never know your name. Imagine watching war and famine kings and tyrants all flickering by like shadows. And you still nailed to a rock. That's the cruelty that Zeus was aiming for. The eagle finally tears away the last chunk and lifts off trailing golden blood across the wind like a comet. Prometheus sags, barely moving. His side gapes open, a wound already beginning to knit back together. And down below the world turns. Someone's inventing pottery. Someone else is forging the first rudimentary sword. A third person miles away is writing symbols on clay tablets, early writing, early law, early civilization. And all of it started with one spark. Prometheus breathes slowly and his lips twitch just barely. You think it might be a smile. Because here's the paradox. Zeus wanted to crush him. But every scream, every drip of ichor, every flap of the eagle's grotesque wings, it's proof that the fire was worth stealing. He can't die, but he also can't stop. That's the curse. The legacy. You drift downward again back to the mortal world where fires blaze in simple stone hearths. A family huddles close telling stories. The children listen with wide eyes as the grandmother explains the sky, how the stars are gods, and the clouds are their breath, and up in the mountains is a titan who made the first fire so they wouldn't freeze. She points upward. The children follow her finger. You look too. And somewhere Prometheus stirs. Not because he hears them, but because they remember, and in a strange, quiet way that matters. The eagle will be back tomorrow, and the next day, but tonight, a child stokes a fire and whispers, "Thank you" to the wind. The eagle comes again. You don't bother flinching this time. The pattern is too familiar. Same descent, same razor-feathered wings slicing the mountain air. Same brutal tearing of flesh as if it's a morning routine no one signed up for. But you notice something new now, something subtle. Prometheus isn't just enduring, he's timing. Each arrival, each departure, each moment between agony and breath he's counting. Observing, waiting, like someone solving a riddle in slow motion using pain as punctuation. He may be chained, but he's not passive. And neither is the eagle. Oh, let's talk about this bird for a second. This isn't your average noble squawking predator from a national emblem. This is Zeus's eagle. Handcrafted or summoned from chaos, depending on which myth you believe. Some versions claim it was born from the same storm cloud that made thunderbolts. Others say it's the reincarnation of one of Zeus's former enemies, transformed and enslaved, now doomed to chew on a fellow rebel for eternity. Sort of an eternal team-building exercise from hell. Its beak gleams with ichor. It smells like sulfur and wet leather, and it doesn't get tired. Ever. You try not to watch this time. Instead, you drift to the edge of the cliff and stare outward. The mountain range stretches far a wall of stone and sky that swallows the horizon. There are no temples here, no priests. Just rock wind and that one unholy screech every 24 hours. You'd think Prometheus would be broken by now. He isn't. Why? Because unlike mortals, time doesn't dull him. It sharpens him. You hover closer and feel it again, that sense that he's thinking ahead. He may not have a watch, but he knows this loop better than any calendar. He's memorized the wind patterns. The constellation shifts even the way the eagle's shadow falls at different seasons. And slowly he begins to talk. Not to the eagle, not to you. To himself. Whispers, really. Fragments. Like a person trying to remember a dream. Or maybe reciting one. He talks about fire, of course, about its shape, its hunger. But he also talks about humans. About their stubbornness, their messiness. Their gift for doing the wrong thing for the right reason, or sometimes just the wrong thing spectacularly. He chuckles at one point. A real raspy sound that cracks through the wind. You lean in. They made a cage. For themselves. With fire, he mutters. And still, they worship it. You're not sure if it's a joke or a lament. Prometheus isn't bitter. That's what shocks you. After all this, he doesn't blame the humans. He knew what they were. Knew what they'd do. He gave them the flame not because they were noble, but because they were capable. They could become something. Zeus didn't see that, or didn't want to. He wanted a world where mortals bowed without question. Where knowledge and power were kept on the top shelf out of reach. Prometheus cracked that shelf. And now for eternity he pays the price with his guts. Here's the wild part the Greeks may have exaggerated. Some versions say the eagle didn't come every single day. That maybe there were gaps. Storms that kept it away. Moments of mercy where the beak missed the mark. But Prometheus never counted on that. He counted only on what he could control. His mind, The facts. The bigger picture. That's what kept him from screaming. And if you listen, really listen, you hear him weaving that picture now. You get a fragment about the future. Wheelsy mutters they'll roll past gods. Then something about metal birds. Then they'll burn their world. Chasing more. Chilling, huh? Some fringe scholars think Prometheus was more than a fire giver. He was a prophet. A titan who saw humanity not just for what it was, but what it would be. And maybe that's why Zeus feared him so deeply. Not because of what he did, but because of what he knew. And if that's true, then this punishment isn't just revenge. It's a muzzle. The eagle takes off again, belly-full wings slicing through mist. Prometheus slumps bleeding, breathing shallowly. But his eyes stay open. Far below the humans are now deep into the Bronze Age. You watch from above as they hammer metal from the earth. Forge tools write crude treaties and invent taxes, perhaps the most enduring evil Pandora accidentally unleashed. One village is dancing, another is fighting, a third is mapping the stars, and in all of it, every spark, every quarrel, every leap forward, you feel Prometheus's fingerprints. He's part of them now, even chained, even carved apart daily. Because pain for him is just the background music. What really matters, they kept the fire burning. And Zeus, he knows that too. Which is why he started watching more closely again. Because if Prometheus isn't breaking, then maybe he's planning. The wind shifts. You don't notice it at first, distracted by the eagle's approach. The blood, the routine of agony. But as the creature takes off once more, its enormous wings sweeping skyward like curtains drawing closed on another terrible act, you feel something different in the air. It's not colder, not warmer, just heavier, like the sky is holding its breath. And then you see them, figures on the horizon, moving slowly through the narrow mountain passes, climbing, struggling, mortal. You blink. You weren't expecting company. Neither was Prometheus. It's the first time in centuries, maybe millennia, that someone's made it this far. The Caucasus isn't exactly on any ancient travel brochures. The air is thin, the terrain unforgiving, and the last guy to set up shop here is, well, attached to a cliff. But this visitor, he's different. Muscles like boulders. Beard like it's been carved from tree bark. A lion skin thrown casually over one shoulder because fashion is eternal. In one hand, he carries a massive club. In the other, a look of determined, tired irritation. You're looking at Heracles. That's right. Hercules if you prefer the Roman remix. But here in this moment, it's Heracles. And he's not here for sightseeing. You drift closer watching him climb. He doesn't flinch at the cold. He doesn't hesitate at the sound of distant screeching. He's heard the stories, he knows what's up here. And you realize he's not climbing out of curiosity. He's here on purpose. Because even though Zeus crafted this eternal punishment with care, even though the chains are spelled and the eagle on autopilot somewhere, the story started to fray. Somewhere, someone decided Prometheus had suffered enough. And that someone was Heracles. Now, here's the twist: he didn't come here just out of kindness. This isn't a mercy mission from Mount Good Guy. Heracles is in the middle of one of his labor's 12 impossible tasks, designed to punish and purify him after, well, some not-so-great life decisions. We're keeping it PG-13, but let's just say ancient heroes had issues. Freeing Prometheus. That's not officially on the labor list, but it's a kind of bonus level. A side quest with mythic implications. And Prometheus knows it. You see it in his face as Heracles comes into view, this flicker of something ancient and unfamiliar. Hope. And here's your quirky fact for this chapter. Ancient playwrights actually disagreed on whether Heracles should have freed Prometheus. Some versions imply it was against Zeus's wishes. Others say Zeus secretly allowed it, knowing Prometheus might still be useful down the line. Historians still argue whether this act was rebellion or part of a larger, hidden divine plan. But none of that matters right now, because Heracles has reached the ledge. He looks up jaw-clenched and then looks around. You watch his eyes narrow as he spots the glint of ichor, the stained rocks, the heavy divine bronze chains. Then he hears it, the screech. You spin just in time to see the eagle return. It wheels through the clouds like a missile fury flaring from its wings. It sees Heracles and decides to attack. Bad call. You blink and it's over. The eagle lunges. Heracles raises the club. There's a sound like a mountain sneezing. Crack. Feathers explode everywhere. The eagle crashes into the rock limp. Maybe not dead, immortal beasts rarely go quietly, but very much out of commission. You hover there in awe, because for the first time in forever the mountain is quiet. Prometheus just stares. He doesn't speak, doesn't move, until Heracles steps forward, planting his feet on the ledge. With barely a word, he lifts his club again, this time not to smash, but to break. The chains. The god-forged, star-enchanted, soul-binding shackles that have held Prometheus for longer than written language. Crack. One comes loose. Crack. Another. Prometheus slumps forward, too weak to catch himself. Heracles reaches out, yes, helps him. Stand. It's clumsy, it's awkward, and it's beautiful. And then it's done. For the first time in centuries, Prometheus is free. The sky doesn't explode. Zeus doesn't thunder in with a cease and desist order. Instead, silence. Just the wind, the cliff. Two figures standing on a ledge that was once a prison. You float beside Prometheus as he breathes real, ragged, heavy breath. His wounds are still healing. His limbs shake. But his eyes, still sharp, still burning. Because what Zeus never understood what Heracles did was that punishment without redemption is just cruelty in costume. And whatever Prometheus may have done, he'd already paid 1,000 lifetimes worth. Heracles doesn't linger. He nods, turns, and begins the climb down, probably off to kill some other monster or bathe in a river of metaphor or something heroic like that. And Prometheus? He watches him go. Then slowly he steps away from the cliff. And for the first time in ages he walks. The first step is the hardest. Prometheus's legs tremble half-forgotten muscles, sparking back to life. His heels scrape the stone, leaving faint trails of gold on gray rock. He doesn't fall, but it's close. You hover beside him, heart if you had one tight in your chest. Not from pity, from awe, because this isn't just a titan walking again. This is a myth unshackled. And it's kind of awkward. He's stiff, unshaven. Well, okay, he's made of divine essence, but still. He's been pinned to a cliffside longer than most civilizations have existed. Give him a break. You'd be a little creaky too. He takes another step, then another. Below, clouds cling to the mountain like whispers curling around his ankles, parting like they recognize him. The eagle is gone, probably circling somewhere out of sight, rethinking its entire career path. And Olympus. Olympus says nothing. You keep expecting thunder, a blinding bolt, maybe a giant floating Zeus head screaming, "You dare!" But nope, just wind and quiet, and Prometheus moving forward inch by inch. And you wonder, is Zeus letting this happen? Historians still debate whether Prometheus's release was planned. Some myths say Zeus finally showed mercy, allowing Heracles to break the chains as part of some cosmic balancing act. Others argue it was a reluctant bargain. Fine, let him go, but he stays out of Olympus. There's even a weird theory that Prometheus in his agony whispered something so terrifying to the mountain that Zeus decided freedom was safer than silence. Whatever the reason, you realize something unsettling. Prometheus doesn't look surprised, almost like he knew this would happen, almost like he was waiting for Heracles all along. And now that he's free, he knows exactly what to do. You follow him as he limps across the ridge. He doesn't head for Olympus, doesn't storm into the nearest village demanding a fire-worshipping parade. He goes east. Strange. You float beside him, gliding over glaciers and peaks and frozen ridgelines. The sun casts long shadows on the snow, and each step he takes feels heavier with meaning. And then you remember the secret. Remember back when we said Zeus kept Prometheus alive for a reason? That there was something the Titan knew. Something dangerous? Yeah, it's time we talked about that. See, Prometheus wasn't just the guy who stole fire and got eagle-bitten for it. He was also the keeper of a prophecy. A whisper older than language. Truth Zeus didn't want to hear. You lean in close, watching as Prometheus murmurs to himself. He's not mumbling now, he's reciting. Practicing, like someone preparing to drop the biggest truth bomb the gods have ever heard. The prophecy that one day a child of Zeus would rise, and that child would overthrow him. Not metaphorically, literally. Like how Zeus overthrew his father Kronos, and how Kronos overthrew his dad Uranus. It's like the world's worst family tradition patricide with a touch of lightning. Zeus knew this cycle, and he feared it. So when Prometheus hinted he might know which child, it would be Zeus panicked and chained him up. Because nothing scares a dictator more than someone with receipts. And now, Prometheus is free, and heading for the one place no god dares tread casually, the land of humans. Not because they're dangerous yet, but because they're listening. That's the shift you feel now. A subtle one. Once mortals were subjects tiny fires scattered across the night, too dim to worry the gods. Now, they're witnesses. They build temples, yes, but also stories. Oral traditions, myths that carry truth disguised in metaphor. They write things down. They remember. And Prometheus, he's becoming a symbol again. Not just of rebellion, of warning. You watch as he finds a low ridge and kneels, pressing his palm into the earth. Not dramatically, just firmly. Like he's anchoring something or calling something up. And around him the air begins to hum. You hear no thunder. But far, far above on Olympus, Zeus sits up. He's been quiet too long. And now he remembers the prophecy. You flash forward in a blink. See visions ripple across the sky like ink in water. Zeus arguing with Thetis about marrying a mortal, trying to avoid the child that would one day undo him. You see Hera's jealous eyes. Apollo's uncertain frown. And then just a flash, Achilles, leaping into war nearly divine. The future uncoils like a snake, and Prometheus, he watches it too. Because he doesn't just survive pain. He sees the patterns. And now that he's free, he's going to make sure the next gods know nothing lasts forever. Not chains, not tyranny, not even Olympus. Historians still argue whether Zeus allowed Prometheus to go free as a show of mercy, or whether he simply couldn't stop what had already begun. Some say Zeus changed the laws of Olympus to save face. Others claim Prometheus made him promise not to interfere again in exchange for keeping that prophecy buried just a little longer. Whatever the truth, Zeus stays his hand. For now. And you descend again back to the valley where people gather around the fire, listening to Prometheus speak. No booming voice, no grandstanding. Just quiet truths wrapped in story. About how fire is not a toy, but a tool. About how creation always comes with destruction hiding in its shadow. About how the worst punishments are the ones that make you forget who you are. And about how remembering that you are more than what was done to you is the most rebellious act of all. He tells them about the eagle, the chains, the price of defiance. And then he laughs. Not bitterly, not darkly. Just honestly. Because he's still here. Still giving. Still burning. And that you realize is the final truth of Prometheus' punishment. It didn't end him. It refined him. Not ash. Ember. Ready to catch wind again. The fire crackles low, sending sparks into the dawn-lit sky like fireflies escaping from a story that refuses to end. You sit nearby now, cross-legged on packed earth, watching Prometheus weave warmth into words. His voice is gravel pulled across centuries of silence, but there's rhythm in it. Not the voice of a god, not even of a hero. Just someone who's seen. And the people lean closer, because his stories don't begin with once upon a time. They begin with, let me show you what we paid to become human. They listen, and not just because he's a titan, because he understands them. Prometheus gestures to the fire and says, this is not just warmth, it is choice, it is risk. Fire asks you a question every time you hold it, will you use me to cook or to burn? You glance at the listeners, wide-eyed children, cautious elders, people who've lived their whole lives in a world that already felt heavy. But now they understand why. Where the pain came from. That strange ache that followed the arrival of fire and tools and words. It wasn't just evolution. It was the price of becoming. You float backward just enough to take in the whole camp. The way the flames dance in every eye. The way the air smells of smoke and something new. Not magic, not godly essence, just understanding. Prometheus doesn't lead them. He doesn't want to be a king. He's seen what those become. Instead, he teaches. He tells them about medicine made from tree bark. About how different woods burn hotter than others. About how lightning always finds the tallest object. And maybe, just maybe that's why you shouldn't worship the tallest guy in the room. He jokes and the people laugh. One of the kids pokes a stick into the fire and waves it around until the flame flickers out. Instead of scolding, Prometheus just says, good. Learn what it means to lose a spark. Then you'll guard it next time. You realize this is something new. A different kind of mythology being born not from altars or thrones or blood sacrifices, but from shared struggle. From someone who doesn't speak down to them, but with them. And above Olympus watches. Still, you flash back upward, drawn like smoke rising from that campfire. Past the birds, past the clouds, to the polished marble paranoia of Zeus's hall. He's pacing now. Not fuming, not thundering. What a thinking. Because this is the part he didn't anticipate. Prometheus chained to a rock easy to control. Prometheus teaching, sharing again. Dangerous. The gods whisper. Hera raises one skeptical eyebrow. Athena of all people seems quietly impressed. Even Hermes, lounging with one sandal untied, mutters, didn't think he had it in him. Zeus grits his teeth, because here's what eats at him. Prometheus gave mortals fire, and pain came with it. Zeus counted on that. A perfect balance freedom, yes, but also suffering. So they'd never forget who was really in charge. But now Prometheus is teaching them how to live with it. And that's unacceptable. So Zeus reaches for his bolt. You freeze, but a hand catches his wrist. You turn. It's Themis Titaness of divine law and order. She hasn't spoken in a long time. Not since the war. But now she looks Zeus dead in the eye and says softly, You promised. And Zeus, thunder god, king of gods, master of the sky, he lets go of the lightning and sits down. Because yes, he did promise. Not to the people, not even to Heracles, but to Prometheus. Long ago, between screams and liver regrowth, Zeus made a quiet deal. Tell me which of my children will destroy me, and I'll free you. Prometheus told him, and Zeus, terrified, swore to keep his end of the deal. And he did. Technically. Sort of. But he didn't expect Prometheus to go this far. To start building a fire of thought that couldn't be chained. You descend again, returning to the valley where Prometheus stares into the coals, lost in his own storm. He knows Zeus is watching. And here's the strangest part. He doesn't care. Because Prometheus has finally learned the truth every rebel needs to survive. You don't need to defeat the tyrant. You just have to outlive their fear. And in this valley surrounded by humans still wiping soot from their hands and making mistakes with wide open hearts, he sees the future. Not perfect, but progressing. They will invent books, music, weapons. Yes, weapons. They'll argue, form governments, abandon them. They'll spill blood over lines in the dirt. But they'll also remember this fire. Not the heat of it, the gift of it. A reminder that someone somewhere decided they were worth suffering for. Prometheus doesn't speak for a while after that. He just leans back against a tree, closes his eyes, and for the first time since the sky cracked open, he rests. The fire dims to embers, the valley hushed in twilight. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls once soft, tentative, as if asking permission to speak in this sacred quiet. Prometheus sleeps. Not the stiff alertness of a god half waiting for punishment, but real deep sleep. The kind that mortals earn after a long harvest. His breath is steady, his face soft. The furrows carved by centuries of pain ease just slightly. You wonder if he dreams. And if so, what of maybe he walks through fire that doesn't burn? Maybe he hears the voices of his long-lost Titan kin. Maybe he dreams of silence, not the cruel kind that came with the eagle, but the peace of things finally settling. You don't stay long in the stillness. Curiosity tugs you toward the people. They're still awake. Some are talking quietly near the fire, passing roasted roots wrapped in leaves. Others sit in small groups, sketching rough figures in the dirt symbols, maybe, or stories. You float between them, catching phrases. Said he gave it for nothing in return. Not a god, but not a man. He hurts like we do. They don't use Prometheus's name much, not out of disrespect. It's more like reverence, like saying it too often might wake the wind or draw thunder from the wrong corners of the sky. Instead, they refer to him as the one who brought fire, as if that one act was enough. And maybe it is. You pause near a young girl drawing in the dirt. She's tracing a zigzag shape fire, perhaps with one finger, then surrounding it with a sunburst pattern. Her brother watches chin on his knees. What does that mean, he asks. She shrugs. It's what I think his soul looks like. Not a temple, not a statue. A soul made of light. You drift higher again, lifting over the tree line into the dark. The stars are out now. Hundreds, thousands, cold and blinking in the endless sky. You remember when ancient humans thought each was a hole punched in the heavens or the blinking eyes of ancestors? You hover there beside the moon, watching the world spin slowly below. And then movement. You turn. Olympus glows faintly on the horizon, haloed in unnatural starlight. And on its throne, Zeus does something unexpected. He sighs. A long, slow breath, heavy with too many years of pretending not to worry. He's not pacing anymore. Just sitting, watching. You hover above his shoulder, invisible, weightless. He gazes down at the earth like a father who's realized his child is growing up in ways he cannot stop. There's no rage in him tonight, just unease, and maybe a hint of regret. Because what he sees now is not just a stolen flame, not just a titan breaking the rules. He sees a new idea forming, a new way of being, one not built on obedience but learning. It started with fire, but now it's spreading. You drop back down into the valley just as Prometheus stirs. His eyes blink open slowly. He stretches carefully like someone testing the edges of newly granted freedom. When he sits up, the firelight casts long shadows behind him. He watches the people, not with pride, not like a king surveying his subjects, more like a parent seeing their child try something dangerous and brave. He doesn't speak right away, but when he does, it's to a group of gathered listeners, and his first words are not a warning. They're a question. What will you do with it now? The people glance at each other. Some look down, others smile faintly. Because that is the real legacy. Not just the fire, but the choice. Prometheus doesn't want worship. He wants awareness. He wants people to understand what they're holding and what it costs. Not just the pain he endured, but the power that comes with knowing things the gods didn't intend them to. A young man replies, "We'll try not to forget." And Prometheus nods. That's all I ask. You wonder for a moment how long he'll stay. Is he meant to walk with them forever? Will he disappear? Like myths tend to fading into mountains in memory? Or will he stay long enough to spark something else? Because this story, it doesn't end with him. It continues every time someone lights a fire, or writes a law, or decides to teach instead of rule. He knows this. That's why when the stars shift and the wind tugs at the branches, he smiles again. It's faint, but it's real. Because he did the impossible. Not just giving humans fire, but yet trusting them to use it. You hover above him one last time that night. The embers glow. The air is soft. And for the first time since the dawn of gods, nothing hurts. The next morning arrives not with trumpet blasts or divine signs, but with dew. A thin shimmer coats the grass. The air smells like wet earth and wood smoke. Prometheus sits cross-legged by the dying fire, gently feeding it new sticks. Not because it needs them, but because the gesture feels right. A little boy sits beside him, yawning. You hover nearby, and for the first time, there's no tension. No threat circling, no eagle wings overhead. Just the strange stillness of a new kind of world beginning to form. Prometheus ruffles the boy's hair without looking away from the fire. You know, he says people used to think fire only belonged to the gods. The boy frowns. Why? Prometheus chuckles. Because it was dangerous and powerful. And sometimes when people are afraid of something, they say it's sacred just to keep it away from everyone else. The boy squints into the flames, considering that. You leave them be and drift toward the village again. It's busy now, hunters preparing for a trek, someone carving designs into bone tools, others weaving reeds into baskets. These aren't grand innovations. They're not building empires or composing symphonies yet. But the difference is clear. They're thinking differently now. The fire didn't just change how they survive, it changed how they imagine. And Prometheus, he watches them without interfering, just observes, occasionally nudges, shares a quiet insight here, a joke there. He's not a god anymore, not in their eyes. He's something else, something closer. And far above Olympus remains quiet. Zeus watches still, but from a distance now. Like a chess player who's realized the board is suddenly full of pieces that move in ways he never taught them to. He can't unstrike the match. Can't unbirth the fire. Can't rechain the Titan. Historians still argue whether Zeus ever truly forgave Prometheus. Some ancient fragments suggest Zeus finally understood the gift wasn't the fire, it was the idea that mortals could grow beyond his control. Others paint Zeus as forever brooding, biding his time for revenge that never came. But in this moment, he does nothing, which for Zeus is massive. Prometheus, meanwhile, begins walking. He doesn't settle in the valley forever. Titans aren't built for stillness. He says goodbye one foggy morning with no fanfare, no grand speech. Just a soft, thank you for listening, and a final smile. The people watch him go. No one stops him. They just light a new fire that night and tell stories beside it. About how he came from the mountains, about the eagle, about the pain, but most of all, about the choice he gave them. You follow Prometheus. He moves through forests, stopping in clearings where no one's ever stood. He visits riverbanks, showing a small fishing tribe how to harden spear tips in flame. He spends a winter with a group of wanderers who haven't yet invented words for warmth or time, but who already know how to pass on the things that matter. Sometimes he's alone, sometimes not. He isn't trying to start a movement. That's not his style. Movements can be co-opted, corrupted. He's sowing seeds, one spark at a time, lighting minds instead of fires. You flash forward just a little. Years, then decades, then a few slow centuries. And the people remember. Their stories twist, change, mutate, as oral traditions always do. But at the core of them all, there's always a figure who suffers to give others a gift. A rebel punished by the heavens. A voice that says, you deserve more. In one region, he becomes the first lightbringer. In another, a trickster who fooled the gods and paid in blood. Elsewhere, he's simply called the one who knows. It doesn't matter which name sticks. What matters is that the idea sticks. That knowledge is worth paying. That progress is possible. That the divine is not beyond question. You drift now between distant villages, each with its own fire. Some are still small, hesitant. Others burn brighter civilizations beginning to spark into being. You see early architecture, writing scratched into stone, laws codified, language forming patterns. It's working. They're building. And Prometheus, he fades into the background, not gone, just watching, waiting, because here's the final twist in his punishment, the one Zeus never saw coming. Prometheus doesn't need to rule. He doesn't need statues or festivals. He just needs the fire to continue. As long as it burns in wood and hearts and thought, he's won. You find him one twilight perched high on a cliff above a river bend, where a village glows with orange firelight. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. He just watches and smiles. The night is clear. Stars pierce the velvet sky like cold pinpricks, and the moon hangs low silver, swollen and watching. Prometheus stands at the cliff's edge, wine-teasing at his tattered cloak eyes locked on the distant fire glow below. The village flickers like a constellation made by human hands. You hover near, and for a while neither of you moves. Then he breathes. Not a sigh, a breath, measured, present. And just like that, he turns from the village and starts walking again. He doesn't know where the path leads, but that's the point, isn't it? Because Prometheus never needed a destination. Just motion. Just momentum. He is the idea that doesn't settle. The spark that moves from one pile of kindling to the next, never quite consumed. You follow. Down winding trails across snowy fields. Past a thunderstorm so sharp it slices the treetops clean, and through a grove where lightning once struck and birthed a wild blaze now tamed into charcoal by clever human hands. He stops there, not because he's tired. Titans don't tire like mortals do, but because something about the air feels right. It's quiet here, remote, but the signs are there, scrapes on trees, footprints in mud, a broken stone bowl half buried in moss. Someone has been here, not long ago. He kneels and traces one of the footprints with a fingertip. Small. A child's. Then he looks up just in time to see a figure emerge from the trees. Not a god, not a beast, just a girl maybe 12 clutching a piece of dried root and looking mildly annoyed that someone's interrupted her solitude. Prometheus raises a hand calm, open no magic tricks, just acknowledgement. The girl doesn't run. Instead she scowls and says, "You're sitting in my fire pit." Prometheus blinks, then grins. He moves aside with a little bow. She doesn't thank him, just squats down, places the root beside a few blackened stones, and begins assembling kindling with an expert's care. Prometheus watches. Not like a teacher checking a student, like a father seeing his child do something that doesn't need help anymore. She strikes flint to steel. Once. Twice. Spark. The fire catches. Slowly, stubbornly, but it catches. She blows gently, shielding it from the breeze with her hand. And there it is. Another flame. Another generation. She doesn't say much after that. Offers him a scrap of root. He declines. She shrugs. They sit in silence. The fire dances between them, and Prometheus, immortal rebel titan of foresight, forever chained and unchained, leans back and lets the warmth reach his face. He doesn't speak of Zeus. Doesn't tell the girl who he is. There's no need. Because she doesn't care. To her, he's just another quiet traveler. And that's more than enough. You glance at the fire again. It's small, not much to look at, but it's there. And you think about everything that fire represents now. Not just warmth or cooking or light in the darkness, but everything that came after. Tools, buildings, books, surgery, telescopes, electricity, spaceflight, TikTok even. Okay, maybe he'd regret that one. But it all started here with this. With a stolen flame and a stubborn titan who refused to let mortals be treated like ants. Historians still debate whether Prometheus intended all of this if he foresaw the entire arc of civilization and handed over fire as a cosmic chess move. Others argue he simply acted on instinct, a kind of divine empathy baked into his nature. They'll probably never agree, but sitting here watching that girl warm her fingers against the flame, you realize it doesn't matter, because Prometheus's punishment wasn't just about fire. It was about doubt. Zeus wanted to punish the idea that gods could be questioned, that knowledge could be shared. And Prometheus, he didn't just endure the eagle, he endured the waiting. Waiting for someone to strike their own flint, to light their own fire, to carry the torch forward without needing him to say a word. And now, they do. You float upward once more through the trees into the open sky. The stars are still there. The world still turns. But something is different. Not louder, not flashier, just wiser. You look back once more. Prometheus still sits beside the girl, the flames painting gold across both their faces. Neither says a word. And for the first time in history, that's exactly enough. Later that night, long after the fire has burned down to a soft orange hush, Prometheus rises quietly. The girl is asleep now, curled beside the coals like a contented fox, her brow still smudged with soot. He doesn't wake her, just leaves a small flat stone near her hand, on it a mark that only she will understand. Not a symbol of divinity, a message. Keep going. And then he walks. His path winds along the ridgeline moonlight, catching in the folds of his cloak silver in his hair. You follow in silence, the world below hushed beneath the soft breath of night. There's no destination now. Prometheus isn't looking to start another fire or deliver another lesson. He's simply bearing witness, watching what unfolds when you give people the tools and the trust to shape their own future. You drift alongside him as the terrain changes. Plains stretch out, rivers twist. Far off, a city's lights glimmer like constellations fall into earth. The world is changing fast now. Metal hums beneath stone. Wheels turn not with oxen, but with fire's distant cousin, steam. The great-grandchild of Prometheus's spark now spinning and churning and reshaping landscapes. And the people, oh, they've grown. They argue more, invent more, destroy more, build again, repeat. The fire never settles, it just leaps from one idea to the next, refusing to rest. And Prometheus watches with something close to pride. Because he knows the truth about progress, it doesn't need a guide. It just needs a beginning. Below in that glowing city, someone strikes a match. In another, a child learns to read by candlelight. In yet another, a girl sits at a desk, sketching strange shapes, formulas, theories, wild guesses about the stars, and next to her, a little pendant shaped like a flame. They don't know Prometheus, not by name. But they know, the same way the first humans did, the same way the fire still remembers whose fingers first cradled it. Prometheus continues on. Up ahead, the road vanishes into fog, and beyond that only time. But he doesn't fear it. Not anymore. Because something deeper than prophecy keeps him moving now. Not rebellion, not revenge. Faith. Faith in the fire. Not just the literal one, though, that still burns wherever people gather to eat or speak or stay warm. The other fire, the one behind the eyes. That restless spark that refuses to be told no. That burns through silence and shame and darkness alike. That grows stronger every time someone asks why not. The one that says, what if we can do better? Prometheus stops once just before the trail disappears into mist. He looks out over the world, hazy, glowing, imperfect, and lets out a low, tired laugh. You're welcome, he says to no one and everyone at once. And then he fades into the fog. No explosion, no lightning bolt, no final judgment. Just the soft sound of footsteps retreating into myth. But he's not gone. Not really. Because every time someone tells a story that matters, every time a teacher shares knowledge not out of duty but love, every time someone chooses to question rather than obey blindly, every time you light a candle during a storm, he's there, just beyond the firelight, watching, waiting, smiling. Because Prometheus's punishment was cruel, but his legacy was unstoppable. And now, as the last embers glow low in our story and the stars blink gently through the dark, it's time to let the fire settle in your mind. Let it flicker there quietly, no longer raging, just steady and warm. The kind of fire you carry inside without ever needing to show it. You've walked beside a titan tonight. You've seen what it means to suffer not because of weakness, but because of love. You've watched him endure pain, survive silence, and find meaning again, not in vengeance, but in gentle resilience. And as you breathe slowly, softly, maybe you realize the fire he gave isn't just in history books or carved myths. Maybe it lives in your choices, in your voice, in the way you learn, question, and grow. The flame he stole for humanity isn't just about cooking or warmth. It's about lighting the way when the road ahead is unclear. Let that warmth stay with you now. Feel your shoulders soften, your jaw loosen, your thoughts quiet. Outside your window, the night is still. The world turns just as it always has, but you can rest. You've heard the whole tale. You've walked through the fog, and now you're home. The fire is safe. The story sleeps, and so should you. Good night. Light end of script. Sweet dreams.
you